Gil. I am here because I have four generations of family members that either have or still work out on site. My mom is heading into her 30th year and gearing up for retirement. And so, I've always had an interest in, site operations and what went on out there. And, when I was a kid, things were a lot more confidential. So when I got the opportunity to be a part of the cab, I jumped at it. So looking forward to a productive year.
Thanks, Carlos. Candace, are you on?
Hey, it's Candace Cave, and I joined the cab mainly because I was curious about SRS. I know it had a great impact on our community and the environment, and I care passionately about the environment. So I just kind of joined out of curiosity and wanted to see what impacts and what things were happening at SRS and how they impacted our community and our environment. I'm excited about being a cab member. I think I'm probably a total novice and know absolutely nothing about what's going on out there. So I'm always asking the questions I think that the community, that a general person in the community would ask. And I think those types of questions are important in this process as well.
All right. Thanks, Candace. I'm going to read off some names because I'm not sure if you're on or not. Betty or DeAndre, give you a moment. Thomas Gardner. No, that's okay. Jim Giel, I'm going to ask you to step up and then AK. Jim?
I think I unmuted myself. Yeah. My name is Jim Deal. I represent Beaufort County and in particular the areas in northern Beaufort County, north of the Broad. I've been on the cab now this is my second term. It's been a fascinating experience and you learn a lot. You learn a lot quickly. And I'm looking forward to a productive year somehow, some way. We'll figure it out.
Thanks, Jim. So we're going to go to AK and then Charles Hilton.
Yes, my name is A.K. Hassan. I'm from Augusta, Richmond County. I've been involved with SRS as a community advocate for many years, going back to when Westinghouse was applying to be the prime contractor at SRS. I was on the site when the DWPF opened, and I've maintained the interest over all these years, and I'm still excited to be involved and certainly excited to be a part of the CAB. Thank you.
Thanks, AK. We'll do Charles and then Narinder.
This is Charles Hilton. I'm from Graniteville, South Carolina. My background is organic chemistry. I'm fascinated with the technical aspects, but my entire career was in the environmental field, so I am equally concerned about the environmental situation at the site.
Thanks. So we'll go to Narinder and then Greg. Narinder?
What sent my application for 2 more years renewal. I worked at SRS for 24 years, and my environmental compliance was my primary forte and regulatory compliance. And then I worked in the quality assurance engineering. And when I joined the CAB, I thought I knew a lot about SRS. I was wrong. I had learned a lot while I'm on the cab because different SME subject matter experts come and explain the thing. And it has been a pleasure working with all of you. I enjoyed it. It's a learning process. Thank you.
Thanks, Narinder. So we'll go to Greg and then Malcolm. Greg?
Hi there, everybody. I am Greg Murray. I'm the vice chair of the CAB and honored to have that position. Thank you very much for that. I am also a professor of political science at Augusta University. I guess one of the small contribution that I can make is my interest in good government and government processes. And I hope to be able to make that contribution. And by the way, finally, thanks everybody for dedicating and volunteering your time for this. Both our DOE folks and all the contractors, as well as all the members of the CAB. This takes a lot of time. It's not always easy. It's important. And just thank you guys for doing this.
Thanks, Greg. So we'll go to Malcolm and then Malcolm.
I'm Malcolm Phillips, and I've been in the nuclear business for many, many years on primarily the power generation side and to some extent on the DOE side, both in the technical area and the legal area. I joined the CAB 2 years ago, and it's been a pleasure working with the James and his staff and the DOE folks. It's interesting learning a lot about what's going on there, and I welcome the opportunity to continue to participate and encourage all the new people to really dig into it. It's good stuff. Thanks.
Thanks, Malcolm. We'll go to Dave Bacchus and then Bobby. Dave?
Hi, I'm Dave Vlakis here in Aiken. I'm on the Strategic and Legacy Management Committee, and I have a background in government service and enjoy working with the CAB. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. And Bobby?
Hello, everyone. I'm Bobby Williams. I've been on the CAB for going into my 5th year. I worked at Savannah Riverside for 36 years, retired in 2016, and just happy to be on the CAB, learning so much that I didn't know about SRS, even though I was working there. There's so much I didn't know, and I'm just happy to see you all again.
Thanks, Bobby. There are a few more names that are on my little list here. I don't see them on immediately, but I'm going to read them off anyway. And if you are here, please chime in, speak up. We'd love to hear from you. Ruth Hollingsworth, Jerry Mossparger, Ken Sejuan, Robert Smith, and Carl Steele. No? Okay, that's all right, folks. We're going to keep going down our agenda then, and we're going to do our agency updates first. We'll go through speakers one at a time and do a brief Q&A just like we do our in-person meetings. So we're going to start with DOE and Site Manager Mike Bundy. Are you ready, sir?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. So, hey, good afternoon and welcome to our virtual Citizen Advisory Board meeting. Great to have you all here. We've been doing a lot of these virtual meetings in the last few months, so we're kind of used to them. It's hard to believe we haven't all met together since last November, so we got a lot of ground to cover. I do want to say welcome aboard again to the new members. I think we met them back in March, but haven't seen anybody in person since then. So thanks for joining us today, Phyllis. And Thomas Gardner, did he ever join us at all? From Hexzibah, Georgia? Or how about DeAndre Davis from Waynesboro? Or dog capital of the world? Okay, we'll cover some of those details later. Waynesboro, named after General Mad Anthony Wayne of the Revolutionary War. George Washington slept there once too. Okay. Again, welcome aboard, Phyllis, and thanks for your willingness to serve on the board. Yeah, we did kick off the 70th anniversary of SRS in January at the Chamber event, City of Aiken Proclamation, and we're featured in Waste Management Conference 20 in Phoenix in March. Of course, then COVID happened, and those of us who were at the conference came back and went immediately into 14 days of quarantine as soon as we got home. But a lot has happened since then. We've taken a lot of actions to track the virus on the site and to protect our workforce. We stood up an infectious disease response team and broke out our infectious disease response plan, which had been written some time ago. to help us find our way through a pandemic. But it did require a lot of revisions, and then, each site had written its own pandemic response plan. Of course, then they all had to feed data up to headquarters, and everybody was providing data in different means, and so then that all had to get coordinated. So, for the first month or so there, it was almost daily phone calls, and we were reporting data back and forth till we got a more uniform plan put in place throughout the complex. So it's calmed down quite a bit since then. I think we have about weekly phone calls with headquarters right now, and a weekly site-wide phone call. But we're doing that phased approach back to full operations. We're a little bit different than a lot of other sites because we have a lot of operating facilities. Even Hanford had fewer operating facilities. They had a lot under construction, but ours were already up and operating, the DWPF, the tank farms, et cetera. So our phase one is a little more advanced than some other sites' phase ones. And so, but we're sticking here for a while because the incident rate of the virus still in the CS area is pretty high. It's come down a lot. I think it's down to, in the CSRA anyway, it's down to under half, a little more than a third, but under half of what it was back at the end of July. So it's gotten better, especially since a lot of municipalities invoked a mandatory mask ordinance. And then coincidentally, the rate seemed to come down. So that's good. And of course, we have mandatory masks on the site. But still, the number of cases you get make it challenging to sort them out and figure out, do the contact tracing, that sort of thing. So we got a ways to go here before we move to the next phase till we get that incident rate down some more. We still have some travel restrictions. We do a lot of cleaning, sanitation, social distancing, all that kind of stuff that you hear about all the time. It's ongoing on the site all the time. Because we want to make sure everybody who is coming to work is safer here than they are when they leave and go outside the barricade. We have had 512 confirmed cases on site. The vast majority of those folks contracted disease off-site. 471 have returned to work. We did unfortunately have one member who passed away due to the virus. It was pretty fast too, so it's a stark warning of how dangerous this thing can be if you have some underlying condition. Apparently that individual did, because started having symptoms on a Monday and passed away on Friday, so it was pretty quick. So we do have to be careful. We're doing some unique things. We have some folks who are doing videos and that we use on site to help educate those people that are here. These are videos of folks who have had the virus and have recovered, and they tell the story of what it was like to have it and what effect it had on them. So they're pretty good for getting a message across about how tough it is, because it'll happen by nature as you go along, especially as the incident rate comes down. People get a little bit too comfortable with the situation, and that'll cause the rate to go back up. So we continually emphasize how serious this is, and I think that follows protocol. So, but even though we're still in phase one operations, we've had some great successes here. We're the first site to utilize the reinterpretation of the definition of high-level waste to classify some material we had that would have previously been classified as high-level waste based on its origin, and is now classified as non-high-level waste based on its contents. And that has allowed us to work to ship off the first 8 gallons of material that is reclassified under that reinterpretation, and send that to waste control specialists in Texas for ultimate disposal. So that process is ongoing. We've shipped most of it. We've got a little bit left to do, but it's going well, and the team did a remarkable job of putting together that program, figuring out which material to get, figuring out how to get it out of the tank and ship it off. So well done there. Big milestone. We reached CD4, which is a formal completion of construction and operational testing of the salt waste processing facility. And this week we have Undersecretary DeBar coming down to do the ribbon cutting. And I believe, Undersecretary DeBar and Ike White will be down here this week to do that ribbon cutting. We're also going out to USC Aiken for the Advanced Manufacturing Collaborative, a little recognition ceremony. We're getting ready to start that project out there too while they're here. So we're pretty excited about both those events. So for the salt waste processing facility, post the DOE operational readiness review, we went into a little maintenance period. We're performing the retests coming out of that maintenance period. And once that's done, we'll go into hot commissioning. Well, hot commissioning is that's when we first introduce actual radioactive material from tank farms into the salt waste processing facility. And then, because it's the first time radioactive material comes in, we do a few tests to make sure it's the plant with real material instead of the simulant we tested it with, that it operates as designed with the real material. And you got to take your baseline radiation measurements so you know what kind of activity there is going through the systems. So we keep everybody safe. And and once you get the baseline done, then if you see changes, you know something's not going according to plan. And that helps us with the proper operation of the plant. So that the whole hot commissioning, once it starts here in a couple of weeks, should take us 6 to 8 weeks, I think, and then we'll continue on through the 1 year of operations, first year of operations. So those are pretty exciting. Looks like the governor will be here to celebrate both those events too. So it's a great opportunity for Savannah Riverside to show them how we get business done down here. We put the taxpayers' money to good use, and we're making things happen. So it should be a good week, although I'm happy not to be part of the public affairs team that has to sort all this out and manage it right now. They're doing a great job of putting it together and doing all the coordination to get that to happen for all those folks. Look, contracts update. Paramilitary selection is still going through its process of doing the final evaluation of the revised proposals we got in, best and final offers from all those the proposers for that. So it's probably got a couple more months to go. The liquid waste follow-on, which we term the Integrated Mission Completion Contract, IMCC. We're due to put out the final RFP on that very shortly. That final RFP is getting briefed to the last couple of folks who have to approve it, and should be coming out very shortly. As we promised the industry that we would send it out towards the end of September. So once we get those final couple of reviews done, then we'll move along with that. So that'll be quite a process to get that contract done. The Savannah River National Lab Management and Operations Contract proposals were received on 10 August, and the Source Evaluation Board is reviewing all those and going through the evaluation process there too. So a lot of contract activity. The Savannah River Nuclear Solutions, we exercised one of two options that we have, one of two 1-year options we have for them. And so that's really going to extend their contract for another year by exercising that first option. So now their contract will run through at least September 30th of 2021. And we have just begun the process of forming the team to work on the solicitation for a replacement contract for SRS. So we've got teams going every which way, trying to work all these solicitations simultaneously, but we're getting it done. We got good people on every one of them, and we're meeting the schedules at the moment. I do have one notice of violation to tell you about. I got to read this so I don't get it wrong. So on August 12th, DHEC issued a notice of violation. for ammonia exceedance at the G10 outfall. Sample was collected in March, reported in April. The probable cause was record high rainfall, resulting in high flow volumes through the central sanitary wastewater treatment facility and mechanical malfunctions which caused upset conditions to the biologic process. Actions to prevent recurrence are increased maintenance surveillance for mechanical agitation, initiation of a process to increase the operational capacity of the treatment system with additional treatment ditch availability. So that's the one interview we had. We'll tell you the other day when the remnants of Hurricane Sally came through, we exceeded the rate of rainfall as high as we've seen it in the last 20 years. At one point, we were receiving 8 inches per minute rainfall, overwhelmed some of our systems to handle rainwater in some of our buildings. So it was pretty excessive rainfall. Amazing. The one last thing I have is that last year we put out EM put out a strategy for how we're going to proceed, how we're going to prioritize work throughout the complex. One of the things that didn't happen in the development of that, because it was the first time we did it, was we didn't have a lot of community involvement in looking at that strategy as it was put together. And we're going to try to rectify that this year, and so we'll be bringing it to you at some point. I don't know the exact process or when yet, but they were just polling us on how we get community input into various things. And I told them, of course, we go to the CAB. We also reach out to our other stakeholders like EPA and DHEC, as we do every year for the budget process. And we felt comfortable we could reach out to all of you in the same way to get your input on the strategy development as we go. So they'll base it off the one that they published last year, which is out in public. I think they published it right at or just before waste management in the spring. And they're starting, the process has just begun with a couple of notifications to us that they're going to start taking a look at it. They'll work from that one and come up with whatever the next revision should be going forward. I also attended the cleanup workshop. It's put on by the Energy Community Alliance last week. It was a virtual meeting, great meeting. A lot of highlights from Savannah Riverside. We were favorably mentioned over and over again. So good on all our folks who are getting work done and making progress here. So I think that's all I got, James. If ready for any questions there might be.
All right, so questions from the board members. Gil, I see you've got your hand up. If you would go ahead, we'll start off with you. Anybody else, if you want to go ahead and type your question into the chat or put your hand up or just let me know that you have a question in the chat, we'll get to everybody. Gil, kick it off for us.
Hey, Mike, thanks for the update. As always, is good. Hey, you mentioned that SRS, you guys exercised the first option for them to go to September 2021. Is there a second option on that?
There is. Yep. When we extended that contract last year, we extended it initially for 1 year. We got 2 1-year options. So this is the first of those 2 options.
I mean, we don't know. We can't predict next year, but you could in August of 2021 extend it another year if you wanted to.
Yep, that's possible. Yep.
Okay. And I appreciate. I know a lot of people on the CAB. We appreciate the public opinion piece and everything that y'all are opening up to. Will that include the main contractor when you guys go around for, actually, like when you actually go through the bidding process for the for SRS's contract? Will there be public opinion for that?
Well, I'm not sure exactly what you mean. So the way the process works is we put together a team, we develop a draft RFP, we normally publish that draft RFP, but then the comments we normally take are from proposers. If if you got something, if the cab has something they want us to consider, they give it to us anytime, starting now.
Well, yeah, the reason I'm asking it is just, I didn't know if we could or not, but through the last 6 years, SRNS has been really good to the cab and helping us out. And just me speaking, this is just Gil, I'm not speaking for the cab, but in the Aiken community, in the Augusta community, SRNS has done quite a bit of, philanthropic work and things along that line. And again, not speaking for the cab, I want to be really clear, but I think that hopefully that's something that would be considered in the proposal. I don't know if that matters or not, but that's where I was going, my line of thought.
Yeah, we always have a community involvement kind of plan we want to see from the contractor in there. I'm not aware that it's ever been part of the evaluation criteria.
Okay.
But we do ask that those kind of plans in there, just like they have a small business plan has to be in there and that sort of things. But not, we do have a, yeah, I don't recall them actually being evaluated under to make sure they had one that was reasonable.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Mike.
All right. Any other questions from the board? Jim,
Bobby
go ahead.
Williams.
Jim, I saw your hand up.
Yep, okay, I think, yeah, got it. Mike, congratulations on getting the authority to move to hot processing at the strategic salt waste disposal. My question is, does this have any effect on Ticker, or is Ticker just going its own path for approvals?
Yeah, so Ticker's in operation. We're using that. Ticker's, you can use it in certain tanks. It's designed to remove cesium from tanks where we have the chemistry correct, and we can do that. The salt waste processing facility removes strontium and other actinides and the cesium. So they both will be running. They're both part of our plan to get this liquid waste processed here over the next decade, 12 years or so. So Ticker theoretically gives us an extra 1 million gallons a year that we get processed in salt waste, somewhere between 6 and 9, depending on how all. We're hoping for 9, but we'll give it our best shot. So that'll really accelerate. So, if you get both of them going, you get about 10 million gallons a year, depending on operational availability. That's what we're shooting for. But yeah, Ticker will keep operating right alongside. Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. We're going to go to Narinder and then Bobby.
Good afternoon, Mike. How about what is the status on saltstone waste processing facility and new silos being built? Not silos, storage tanks.
Yeah, so good progress there. Six is, well, a couple things. First, in order to bring SWPF online and get it to operate at capacity, we had to make some material upgrades to the saltstone facility so it could produce a grout at the right rate. We also had to hire enough folks to get them trained up to go 3 shifts workforce out there so we can operate at more than just day shift. So all those things are in place. We think we're in good shape there. I don't have a recent update on our drive to make cement without cement. Just use the slag and fly ash. I'm not sure where we are on that one at the moment, but that would be a big help. As far as the tanks themselves, 6 is in use. We're filling tank 6. 7, we're in kind of final phases. We're doing the rubber lining on the inside, and then we'll do a hydrostatic test of it, fill it up with 32 million gallons of water. And so 7 will be, I think it's complete early next year sometime. 8 and 9 are under construction kind of simultaneously. And as long as the budget comes through in 21, we don't have a lot of slack in the schedule to build those things and according to the plan. So we got to keep them funded and keep them building them, keep the pace up on building them. But right now we're okay. We're if things go as planned, we'll meet all the schedules. So.
Thank you. I have one more question, if I can ask.
Go ahead.
What's the status on bringing foreign nuclear material which used to come from Canada for Etch Canyon processing? What's the status on that?
I believe the Canada job is done. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Narinder. Bobby, let's turn over to you.
Mr. Bundy, you might have said something about it and I missed it, but did you say anything about the security contract at SRS?
Yeah, it's just going through the very final stages of review with the source evaluation board. So they need to issue their report, and the source selection official will make a final selection, and we'll get that thing out. But that's about what I can say about it right now.
And when is it due?
When they get done. That's kind of how those things go at this point. It's not it's not a year away. It's probably a couple months away. But I can't say exactly sure because it all depends on how fast the people do the review of the decision process.
Okay, thank you.
And those aren't, the people doing that review are not, once the decision is made, the people doing the reviews are not here at SRS. They're at headquarters and such. So we lose control of our schedule at that point. We got to wait for that stuff to get done.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Mike. So one thing I'd like to add to Bobby's comments there, unlike the other procurements, the paramilitary contract, when we did the extensions on it, we did it in 4-month increments, which might be an indicator to you that we're probably a lot sooner to getting it awarded than the other contracts.
All right. Thank you, sir. Just a reminder, everybody, if you do have a question, you can raise your hand from beside your name in the participant list or drop it in the chat. Let me know or text Heather. There's lots of ways to let us know. Up next, Malcolm, you have a question for Mr. Butney?
Yeah, I do. It's kind of two questions, but the first has to do with, the notice of violation. An ammonia exceedance during a massive rainfall. I guess there was an overflow that kicked into this, and I assume that was self-reported.
Macon or Angel?
They're both
Hello, this is Angela. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, yes, it was self-reported in the monthly report that we send.
Okay, and I assume, again, it was like an ammonia exceedance. There was an overflow of something that kicked the ammonia into some kind of monitoring system that showed it exceeded. And in line with that concept, with the massive rainfall that you had, Mike, did you have any other abnormalities as far as drainage systems or overflow of different volumes or tanks that created an unusual dispersion of contaminants or radioactive material across the site? Did you notice anything dealing with this massive rainfall?
We have not at this time noticed anything different or abnormal.
Yeah, and the most recent one was not necessarily the total volume, which is what got us back there in the NOV, but the rate at which it came down. And the problem we had was, our gutter systems on the buildings and the drainage systems on the buildings were unable to handle the rate. So it wasn't the total volume like back in April. It was just the short burst duration rate that was so high. It was like 8 inches an hour. And, just like I got one spot on my gutter back at home, it turns into, it looks like a fountain when those thunderstorms come through. But on a normal rainfall, it handles everything.
That's all. Thank
Any other questions from the board? All right, cool. Thanks very much, everybody. Let's turn this to EPA.
Hello, John Richards here. I guess it's been a while since I missed the last. You hear me okay?
We hear you great. Thank you.
I missed the last two regular CAB meetings, and we were on the every other month schedule last year. And then, of course, with us in our pandemic having, I think I missed the last virtual one I think we had in June, partial one. So it's good to at least be on with you today, and I'll go through some of EPA, what we've been doing, and then Rob Pope, who's on, he can add on after me since it's been a while since he's listening on the cab or been to the cab. As you know, for cab members, EPA, like all federal agencies and DOE, we went under the pandemic working remotely almost the same time, the middle of March. Ironically, and I don't know, Bill mentioned this, but we're all, a lot of us, at the Waste Management Symposium in Phoenix that second week of March when a lot of this was happening. So, and which was unfortunate because some had already dropped out, like my Oak Ridge colleagues. I think they had left after maybe the first day. Most stayed till that week ended. A lot of international colleagues were having to leave early because that was when Europe was canceling, or US was canceling flights to Europe. So a lot of my international colleagues and others that were there we always had many from other countries, they had to leave a little bit early. And which I hated because Savannah River was the DOE focus for that symposium. Every year they do one of the DOE sites as one of the major highlights. And as part of that, not only Rob on our course, as many of you know, in EPA, Brian Hennessy, Susan Fulmer's on for DHAC, they held a core team training. Susan may talk about it too, for anybody that wanted to come to at the symposium, because you have multiple DOE sites there, a lot of states are there, a lot of different companies are there. So that was a great chance for the Savannah River, Brian, Rob, Susan, and others to highlight how we work together in Superfund. And some of those core team principles I may have mentioned on some of my talks with the CAB on what EPA does under Superfund with Savannah River. So that was a great part of that symposium meeting way back when we were almost still normal. So since then, EPA has been working remotely just like all the other agencies. I work in Superfund, of course. I'm the FFA manager for Savannah River. I'm also at projects at Oak Ridge National Lab, Y12. Rob, of course, still works a lot of projects at Savannah River. He has other projects as well, like Tyndall Air Force Base. So many of us that may have used to just work one DOE site, especially Savannah River has some of the most projects compared to most Superfund sites. Many of us have had to work in the last few years on other sites, but Savannah River is still my priority. It's part of my management for me to work on Savannah River projects. And we've been able to see with Brian and Jim Folk and others with the tank program and the Superfund program, we haven't seen many delays due to the COVID, some of our milestones and some of our work. In fact, we just met last week. It was my first trip. I don't know if it was Susan in South Carolina since March, where we inspected the 235F plutonium facility that's being considered or under the dates now for decommissioning and deactivation. So we during this time we actually got a major milestone done early. Many of you know Deidre Lloyd, that's one of our project managers in office. We were able to get the D area ROD 2 months early. So that was just signed by Department of Energy first, then it goes to South Carolina, then comes to EPA's division director, our Superfund division director. And it was scheduled for November, but Deidre and myself were able to convince DOE, let's go ahead and get this done early. We needed the target for this fiscal year. So that would turn out to be a great thing that we got accomplished 2 months early into this fiscal year. So kudos to our project manager, Deidre Lloyd and Brian and Susan and others who worked hard to get that one out the door. I don't think there's anything else I have. Of course, if you have any questions, I'll go over. But Rob, since you're on, do you have anything you wanted to add? Oh,
Yeah, I'll turn on my video for just a minute. I apologize. The camera on my laptop is failing, and I'm scheduled to get a new laptop, but I have not yet received it. Just so you can kind of see how bad it is. So I have this nice striation effect on my camera right now, but I don't want anybody to suffer through that, so I'm just going to turn it off here. Just real quick, John covered everything that really needs to be talked about. I do want to give SRS kudos for getting the salt waste processing facility up and running and hot operations going. EPA, well, that is not an EPA approvable facility. It's really with the state of South Carolina and Savannah River site. It leads to cleaning out tanks, which leads to closing tanks and closing tank farms and getting final remedies in place for tank farms. And it's a giant step forward, as I think almost everyone knows, and we're really pleased that that's finally getting to where it needs to be. We've all been waiting much longer than we thought we would, and we has struggled mightily with their contractor through all of the technical issues and other issues to get it done. So we're glad to see it happen. But other than that, I hope everyone's staying safe and enjoying getting to work from home, like all of us are for the most part. And we continue to make good progress with SRS. I don't know if John let you know, but last year I was actually the manager for the Department of Energy section and did a lot of work with Oak Ridge and Paducah the majority of last year, as well as Savannah River site. And that was a good experience for me to work with the other two facilities a lot more closely than I had in the past in our region, and also just a good experience to know that the bragging that we do about how we get things done at Savannah River site is actually not just bragging; it's the reality that it works really well here and much better than it does at other places. And we are also pushing hard to spread that and get it to work that well at other facilities. So I hope the community around Savannah River site realizes how well the DOE works with the regulators at this facility and how we get a lot of things done at a more expedited schedule than anybody really thinks we'll be able to do. With that, I'll hand it off and see if the state has things to tell you.
Before we dive into that, are there any EPA specific questions that we need to hit today? Julia, I see your hand up. You still look muted to me. Let me give you just a second. I got it for you. If you can ask your question over again, I got you.
You got me? Okay. In last week's presentations, the presenters both stated that they were abiding by all of the rules and regulations of the EPA and all of the environmental laws. However, we know from the Charleston Post and Courier that the present administration has relaxed many environmental protections. So my question is, how does this affect SRS and the surrounding communities?
I'll let Rob add on after I say it. To this point, obviously, we've had a lot of differences in this administration, to put it mildly, in the last 3.5 years. But for a Superfund program, our budgets have not been cut to anything that's affected, especially our federal facility work, whether it be with DOD or DOE. In fact, DOE remains one of our highest priorities. So we've been able to get funding for like our contracts to help us a lot with all of our federal facilities. It hasn't affected any of our work with Savannah River, Oak Ridge, for example, Paducah in our region. I don't think that's affected any other DOE site. So Superfunds has remained a big priority. There had been back in 2016, any record decision, any final remediation decision in our record decision, if you're familiar with that, anything went over 50 million had to go through a briefing in headquarters. And I don't think we've had any of those in our region, at least for DOE, Department of Energy facilities. Other ones like Hanford had a $200 million decision that had to go do that panel. But other than that, and even that's just more briefings you have to do. It didn't really affect the actions going on at that site. So, and even during the pandemic, any of our high priority sites with major, like we have a big phosphate site in Mississippi, which has major water, low pH levels that must be maintained. We've been able to have our project managers continue doing that work there during the whole pandemic when most of us have not been allowed to go to Savannah or Oak Ridge to have our meetings. We've had obviously almost all of our meetings online, whether it be Department of Energy facilities or any other Superfund facilities. But to this date, we have not seen any really affected change in the Superfund program. In fact, at least in our region and other regions as well, we've actually been able to hire some because so many people are retiring at my age and older. So that's actually been a benefit we didn't anticipate back in 2016. We thought we would not be able to replace many people. So Rob, do you have anything to add to Julia's question?
Yeah, just overall on a national basis, we have seen actual plus ups in the budget for Department of Energy and Department of Defense facilities. And John and I specialize in federal facilities, so that's the ones we work on the most. So we've seen those plus ups, which have allowed those facilities to get a lot of work done. So a little bit contrary to what you hear in the press. But Superfund is kind of an unusual program for EPA. We're not as much of a regulatory program as we are a cleanup program. And so we have a little bit different focus, and the current administration has seemed to like that focus. So that's one thing. In fact, there's even some, I don't know if you know who, now her name's not coming to me, but the Love Canal community leader, Lois Marie Gibbs, who's now the executive director of the Center for Health and Environment and Justice, and she's been an environmental activist for decades. She was one of the founding moms fighting for the cleanup of Love Canal, after all. She actually has had the similar sort of things to say about this administration and the way they've worked Superfund. There's been a lot, even on the private sites, there's been a lot of direct interaction between administration officials and community members. Excuse me, getting things cleaned up, and this administration and Congress has been very good about funding cleanups at the federal facilities and some of the bigger Superfund sites. So I have no comment on other regulatory programs, but for us, as John said, it has been working well.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from the board? No, I don't think I'm seeing anything right now. So let's go over to the states for South Carolina DHEC. Susan? Oh. Susan, I'm sorry, I can't hear you, and I think a few other people maybe can't either. We may have to come back around. Are there any other discussion topics that we need to hit up while we wait for maybe internet signal to catch up or get better for anybody?
James, this is Grace Ann. Can you hear
Grace.
me?
I can, yeah.
Okay, so while Susan's trying to figure out her internet issues, I can talk about ESOP. Since we haven't been able to meet since February, hopefully everyone received a link to our 2018 ESOP annual report, which is now available online. We are currently working on the 2019 report, so hopefully that will be available at a time where we can all recommune. But because I do the outreach side of our ESOP program, I have been trying to figure out different virtual ways of doing outreach. So Delisa allowed us to be a part of the treat workshop in I guess July. And then we're also going to be doing another ESOP presentation for Treat in October. And then this week, we are actually, for the first time, going to be partnering with the LEAP program at SRS, which is the Professional Development Group, to do a presentation on ESOP. So that will be new and exciting to get to work with them.
That's great, Grace Ann. Any other questions about ESOP from the board? I know that presentation or those links went out to you a while ago, but now would be a decent time if you have anything that you remember. No, not seeing anything, not hearing anything. All right. Susan, if your internet comes back, we'll be more than happy to turn it over to you. Otherwise, thank you, folks. I appreciate it.
James?
Yes, sir.
This is Malcolm. If I have a kind of a general question for those three, if you would, and I'm sorry I didn't get it in earlier, but we've heard a number of times where the interaction between the state, EPA, and DOE at Savannah River is remarkable. And we hear that the FFA worked so well in trying to sort through the projects and milestones and whatever, and this is an anomaly, wrong word, this is different than other sites. So my question is, why is this working so well? Is it the people, or is there a process that y'all instituted that's different than the other sites? Or, what do you attribute this to?
So I know Brian touched on that at the committee meeting quite a little bit. And I think rather than turn it over to him, I'm going to ask EPA if John, either you or Rob, would maybe echo some of the sentiments that Brian may have expressed last week for the Q&A for the board. Why is the working relationship with DOE at this particular site, what's working so well?
This is John. I'll let Rob answer that mostly, but I think it goes a lot to trust and a long-term relationship with each other, with us and the state, and management support on all sides to get projects done. So even when we might have some disagreements, we're able to work them out in our meetings or even the next meeting without having to raise them up to like Bundy's level, for example, or our regional administrator's level, which is different than other DOE sites. And I think that's goes with a trust factor and just regular being able to communicate together. Well, I'll let Rob answer that since he was part of the core team training with Brian.
Yeah, this is Rob. I know from afar it looks like everything is great, but Brian's been around long enough to remember the times when it wasn't great, and we had disagreements on a regular basis, and really were not moving things forward, and there was a lot of reasons for that. But when I came to the site, started working with Savannah River site about 2003. They had already implemented this core team partnering process, the core team process overall, and it has a major impact. Most of the meetings with Department of Energy involve a dozen or more contractors, one or two EPA people, one or two DOE people, and 4 or 5 state people, and with that many voices and everybody representing different points of view, sometimes I think it becomes tough to work things out. And the core team has allowed us to say, all right, who's speaking for EPA, who's speaking for DOE, and who's speaking for the state. And that's one of the big processes, is when it comes time to say, this is how we're going to do this risk assessment, or this is how we're going to look at these alternatives. There's really 3 decision makers, and that's very well laid out. And I've worked with a lot of facilities, both DOD and DOE, and it's not always that clear who the decision makers are in meetings like that, because they don't always follow a similar process. So that has a big impact. But it's also sticking to this core team process where we go, all right, what is the problem we're trying to fix? Are we trying to fix we have an ammonia exceedance, for instance, or are we trying to fix making sure that water gets treated in general and that overall there's not a problem? And so knowing what our problems are, that problem definition is, and how we're going to address it is very key to this process. A lot of other sites do not use a system like that, where they try to work through the documents that are laid out in the CERCLA process or the Resource Conservation Recovery Act, RCRA process, but they don't really focus those documents on what problem they're trying to fix. And at SRS, it's been a very innovative place where we've taken all kinds of approaches. We've looked at area operable units to bite off big chunks of the site at a time. And at the same time, we've stepped back to make decisions on individual high-level waste tanks, to take little bites when we need to take little bites. Just the ability of the three parties to work together and follow a set process has really been key to the success. And John talked about trust, and trust doesn't just happen. Trust is developed between regulators and regulated entities over a period really of years of working through tough problems and finding solutions that work for all three parties. And that's how you get to trust. And we haven't been able to do that as much at a lot of the other facilities. Not that we haven't had successes. I mean, a lot of the facilities have had great successes. Oak Ridge will turn and point to the fact that they're turning their old gaseous diffusion plant into East Tennessee Technology Park is a great success, and they have had a lot of great success at that. So we shouldn't disparage all these other facilities and say they're not doing anything. They are still doing great things, but what we have at SRS is, I think, above and beyond that. And it's because we followed this process and worked through the tough issues. And there have been multiple times where we thought we were making good progress, and then we hit an issue on one little specific part of a remedy, be it a technical issue or a legal issue or a process issue, and had to step back and said, all right, we are going to have to slow this down. So sometimes we do say it's more important to fix problems as we're going along than it is to stay to a set schedule. And that's also a very important part of that process. And I don't know if Susan's working, then she probably has more to add too.
I want to ask Rob, would it be fair to say that the major difference is the fact that you're bringing 3 decision makers to a table instead of a dozen negotiators?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. But that core team process is more than just having 3 decision makers. It's also a way of working through the issues and focusing ourselves. And that includes having good technical facilitation, so an outside party that really doesn't have a dog in the fight, but helps us work through issues. That has a lot with making sure we're recording key agreements and we're not just relying on some vague meeting minutes. All those things are part of the process. And we actually, Brian, myself, and Susan and Heather did a half-day training at Waste Management this year about that process, and we have a full-day training that we do. We have a refresher of every few years when we have new players come, both for contractors and regulators and DOE. So it's also keeping up the knowledge base of how we do this, and having just unbelievable great state regulators like you guys do in South Carolina. That's my plug for how well we get along with the state of South Carolina. That makes a huge difference.
Susan, I see your video is back. Do you want to add anything to that?
James, I just have one follow-up. This is Malcolm again.
Go ahead, Malcolm.
To start with regard to that explanation of why it worked so well, that's awesome. And I think the punchline of all of that is the objective. The objective is to look at what to keep your eye on the ball versus look at how can I ding this, or how can I get behind this. It's keep your eye on the ball, and a common objective is awesome. Now, an offshoot question I had has to do with WIP. We know that WIP is critical to waste isolation pilot project, is critical to many of the projects at Savannah River on the cleanup side. And yet WIP has had its own difficulties. Does any does that trouble anybody? Or I guess y'all guys are tracking that pretty heavily. Is that a priority, for y'all tracking it on your side? Because WHIP doesn't get on track, there's going to be problems.
Brian? I'm sorry, I'm not hearing anything.
Hey, James, it's Maxine. Can I try to answer that?
Yeah, sure.
So yes, we do keep track of what's going on at WHIP. It's very dependent for our true shipments, also for when we start our downblended plutonium shipments out to WHIP. So we have standardized meetings with WHIP to make sure they're on track and make sure we're on track and we're meeting their requirements for their approvals of our programs and our waste characterization. So it is something that the department watches.
All right. Great, thank you.
James, can I talk to that?
Gil?
Malcolm, one of the things that I got to do last year before COVID, and it's when Doug Howard was in Greg's seat. We went out to Idaho, and we also went to WHIP. We got to learn a lot about the prioritization of WHIP shipments and what they can handle. WHIP is getting shipments on a regular basis, and we are getting we're getting our allotted shipments. However, from what we were explained to both in Idaho and when we were in New Mexico, was WHIP's at capacity, not for their storage, but at capacity of what they can take in. So, that was the question that both Doug and I presented. What can we do? What can Savannah Riverside do to get to the front of the line? And they're like, there's really nothing. There's nothing we can do. I've had conversations with people at SRS, our people, and they're pushing all the time. But it's like pushing a rope uphill. There's nothing we can do.
Hey, James, let me make a comment here. So within the department, there is a True Waste Corporate Board. It meets on a regular basis and goes through all the priorities of who needs to ship material to WHIP. And so everybody gets a seat at the table, and we all get to prioritize things to make sure it all works together. It's a well-functioning operation, and it gets right to the highest level, right up to EM1, to make sure we got the priorities right to support the program. So as far as making sure that we get our priorities incorporated into that overall schedule, we have a good process for that. Certainly a lot of work to do out of WHIP with their equipment and materials, but it's got the right level of attention throughout the department to make it right.
All right. Thank you. And I just want to read out the comment that Brian dropped in the chat for us. Brian Hennessy, DOE FFA manager. Our cleanup program does not generate transuranic waste, so WHIP is not a factor. We do create low-level waste at times, but not true in that. Okay, so that's just something to keep in mind as we go forward.
James, this is Rob Pope. I'll just add one little thing that to keep in mind, that the permit, the national permit for WHIP is actually handled by our Office of Radiation Indoor Air and EPA headquarters. And so the regional office here in Atlanta that handles the Southeast, eight states in the Southeast, doesn't really interact with that permit. And well, TRU's not, like Brian said, it's not part of the cleanup program in general to dispose at WHIP. For us, it's very important to SRS, but it's not something that's handled by EPA locally. It's handled up at headquarters level. And it's been quite a while, but when they were renewing the WHIP permit, I don't know, maybe a decade ago, we actually we invited one of the WHIP folks down to speak at a CAB subcommittee meeting, I think. And they were happy to come. So if that's something that's ever desired and you want to hear from the EPA folks that are actually overseeing WHIP, we can work with DOE and James and make that happen.
And this is John. I echo that. I work a lot with the people in Orion headquarters, our radiation headquarters, that do a lot of the WIP inspections, and they go to all the DOE sites on a regular basis. But again, that's all programmed totally separate than Superfund.
All right. So last question is going to be from Dave Avakis, and then we're going to take a break. Dave, go ahead.
I just had a question on the K area facilities that, and I had some notes here from previous presentation that going to continue to downblend the surplus plutonium, and that the shipments to WIP were expected to begin in 2021. Is that still accurate?
Maxine, I think you're on. Is that going to be?
So, sorry, I had problems getting off of mute. So the current schedule is dependent on us getting certified by WIP and meeting their characterization program requirements. And I think the current schedule shows us in 23 making shipments to WIP, not 21.
All right. Thank you, everybody. So at this point, I know that we don't have a lot left that we need to cover for today, but I do want to take a short break just because, sitting in one place on a virtual meeting for a little over an hour is a lot to ask. If we could, let's all be back at our seats at 2:30, and then we'll pick up from there. So you're going to get a little less than 15 minutes, okay? 2:30, whoever's online, that's who we're going with. Thanks, folks. Okay, I'm showing 2:30, and hopefully we have everybody back. Before we go into the next agenda topic, which is the committee round robin, uh, Susan has called in, so she's going to be able to give us that DHEC update that we were looking for earlier. Uh, After that, we're going to go into the committee round robin. Just to let you know what our plans are for that, we're just going to ask every committee chair to give us a brief update of where they are. A couple of you didn't have presentations this month. That's okay. Just remind us of what's going on for in the past. What was the last thing you were working on? What is something you hope to work on later? Uh, Not expecting a whole lot. And then for those of you that did have presentations this month, if you could just give us the key takeaways from that. What should the board have learned? What should they know? Just, real quick elevator pitch version of that. And I don't think that that'll take us a whole lot of time for us to really get through. Susan, if you're ready, we can hand it over to you and get DHEC's 2 cents for this month.
All right. Can you guys hear me now?
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, sorry about the technical difficulties earlier. Not sure what was going on with that, but good afternoon to everybody. It is great to see you all again. I know it's been a while. I hope everyone is doing well. It has been a particularly busy year at DHEC, especially for our colleagues on the health side of the agency. I'm sure that I don't need to remind anyone, but I feel like I wouldn't be doing my job as the DHEC representative if I didn't remind everyone to continue to have good hygiene practices, wash your hands, wear your mask, and practice social distancing. Also, want to make sure that you're all aware of the great COVID-19 resources that are available on our website. That's scdhec.gov. Just click on the COVID-19 link at the top of the page, and you can find everything from daily statistics to locations of testing sites, information on how to protect yourself and your family, and as well as some great resources for your mental and emotional health during these challenging times. So that information online if you haven't already seen it, so that you can keep yourself and your family healthy. On the environmental side, our work at SRS continues full steam ahead. We still have staff that are making site visits, and we've been continuing to conduct meetings, whether they're virtually or if needed, they're in person. And of course, if we're having them in person, we're putting all the proper COVID precautions in place to make sure that we keep everybody healthy. So we are very excited about the startup of the salt waste processing facility. I want to congratulate DOE on achieving that milestone. We can't wait for it to start emptying the high-level waste tanks, and we're looking forward to continuing to work with DOE and EPA on the closure modules and all the regulatory documents that will come as the tanks are emptied. Some other FFA soil and groundwater updates for you. On September 15th, so just last week, DHEC and EPA met with DOE for a facility tour and problem identification scoping meeting for the building, for building 235F. So if you recall, back in 2019, the CAB recommended acceleration of deactivation and decommissioning of this building. So DHEC has also encouraged DOE to move forward with D&D of the facility. So this recent meeting is an early step in the regulatory process for D&D. We'll continue working through the scoping process, and we'll have our Revision 0 removal site evaluation report, engineering evaluation, and cost analysis, the RCERT ECA that you've heard of. That'll be coming in September of 2021. John Richards mentioned that in August we signed the second early action record of decision for the D area operable unit, and that was done on an accelerated schedule. Brian sent us a note saying that document will be coming out on Thursday this week. So this record decision covers the 488 1D and 2D ash basins, the 488 4D ash landfill, and the 489D coal pile runoff basin. So that's a document that'll be available for the public to look at. Another document that will be coming up, not quite yet, but coming up soon, will be the lower three runs proposed plan. We should be getting the Rev 1 document this week for our review. And once that gets finalized, that's going to be a document that is available for public comment. This one is another first of a kind. It's our first integrator operable unit that will have a record of decision on it. So that's another great step of progress at the site. A couple of things to mention for the 5-year remedy reviews. The revision 1, of the 6th 5-year remedy review for operable units with groundwater remedies, that was recently approved by DHEC and EPA. So that means that a clean copy of that will be signed soon, and then that will be available to the public. That document will cover the C area groundwater, chemicals, metals, and pesticides pits, D area oil seepage basin, L area southern groundwater, R area operable unit, and the R area reactor seepage basins. And we are beginning to scope the 6th 5-year remedy review for operable units with engineered cover systems. That is a report that will be issued in 2022, but we're starting the scoping process and we'll start working through the document review process on that one over the next year. And then I guess finally, I'll just mention quickly, you heard everyone mentioning the Waste Management Symposia earlier in the conversation, and we did participate, South Carolina participated in that symposia and also participated in the workshop on the principles of environmental restoration with the DOE and EPA. That was a very successful workshop, so successful that they asked us to do it a couple more times. So we did a virtual offering for the various sites and state regulators in, I think that was May, and then we did a follow-up, more specialized version for managers in June. So that's, again, as Rob mentioned very well earlier, that was a very successful, we have a very successful process at SRS with our core teams approach. And so lots of people are very interested in how we do things and how we accomplish a lot of the great work that we do at the Savannah River site. So that's all from me. I'll take any questions that there may be.
So briefly, are there any questions for DHEC before we move down our agenda? Give everybody a chance to raise their hand, mute, whatever. No? All right. Thanks, Susan. We really appreciate it. All right, so now let's run down our next bit of agenda items. That is the committee round robin. When we return from break, I was explaining what that should look like. Our plan is that if you did not have a presentation this month, committee chairs or your designee, just give us a brief status update on where you are, what you hope to be working on soon. If you did have a presentation, we're just going to ask you to give the 1 or 2 key takeaways that you hope the board got from watching the presentation and the Q&A, both of which are available on YouTube if you haven't had a chance to watch it. All right, so we're just going to go down alphabetically down the committee list, and I'm going to start with facilities disposition and site remediation. So Malcolm, do you have, what are the key takeaways that you wanted everybody to get?
James, thanks. I've been on the board now for, this is my 2nd year, so I'm still learning how to spell Savannah River. So I'm not quite as insightful perhaps as I will be downstream. But Brian Hennessy gave a very, very good area completion project briefing, and it was complete, thorough. We had a lot of questions dealing with it, but the kind of punchline of the whole thing was looking in overview fashion at what we're about. And basically it's taking areas at Savannah River that need cleanup, if you would, or decontamination, decommissioning, and putting those into a project setting. And Brian went over a number of those. Those project settings ultimately get kicked into the FFA, which is the facilities agreement. That's the tri-party agreement with the state, DOE, and EPA. And that agreement lays out each of the projects and puts in milestones for completion of those projects. And we had a substantial discussion with regard to that process, the milestones associated with it, which are being ticked off routinely and expeditiously. One of the big questions that we had related to the milestones by the tri-party agreement get extended as necessary. And we said, can we go back and get some feel for what the original milestone was and what the extended milestone was and what the completion was, so we get a sense of how expeditiously we're really tackling these projects. And there was some degree of discussion associated with that. And the reason why I think this was an important point for the committee was what I believe are the advisory committee's focus needs to be is to ensure that these projects are identified, tackled, put into the appropriate process, that they're safely closed out, that they're closed out expeditiously as possible, and that finally the legacy site doesn't adversely impact the environment going forward. And so that's the game plan that we're looking at. Brian took on the projects and started going through them in a kind of a categorized fashion in a very, very thorough manner. I encourage everybody to take a look at his presentation. It's a good presentation from that standpoint. As far as where we're going to be going downstream, as soon as I can learn to spell Savannah River, we'll be tackling things a little bit more thoroughly as a committee. But we have not been as comprehensive as perhaps we could have been because of a number of factors. Having said all of this, does anybody that was on the committee that was involved in the presentation have anything to add or any questions associated with this?
Narinder, do you have anything that you want to add to the conversation? Oh, we need you to unmute. Let me hit you.
Wonderful presentation. It was a very learning experience. Thank you.
Thanks, Narinder. All right. And thank you, Malcolm. Up next, we have nuclear materials. So Charles Hilton, I'm going to ask you to unmute and if you'll give us a rundown, please.
Thank you, James. Probably the most, let me get something else needed. I'm sorry, I'm like Bobby. I'm struggling with internet connections and phone connections. For those of you who don't live in rural Western County, Aiken, you probably can't imagine not having DSL, no cable, no nothing, but I am in that situation. So it has been a struggle. But probably the most important thing I see that we're coming up with is the electrolytic dissolver at H Canyon. We haven't had a committee meeting, but we have one scheduled in October, I believe. And I am really looking forward to that. H Canyon, I think, is probably one of the most important tools that the SRS facilities has in what it can do in getting rid of the spent fuel and cleaning up some of the areas that we've got. I'm assuming that Maxine might be doing that presentation for us. They have been very patient with me with many questions that I have on these processes, and I truly look forward to that. The other thing I think that may be coming up is on the SDUs, and Mr. Bundy has given us an update on where we are with those today. So probably the biggest thing is H Canyon, and I was pleased that although I was not able to participate back in the June meeting, I believe it was, on the IPL, we moved H Canyon up to number 2 priority. Was it 3, I believe, and we did move it up to 2. So I think that's important for the long-term goals and successes of cleaning up SRS. Thank you, James.
Thanks, Charles. We'll go to Jim and then AK for waste management. Jim Gill, tell us about strategic and legacy management, if you would please.
Okay, we were successful at the June meeting in putting together the updated IPL, as Charles just mentioned. So that was something that needed to get done and did get done. And I think everybody was pretty happy with the result. We were going to have at the at this last meeting a update on the Advanced Manufacturing Collaborative. That has to have been pushed back a little bit, and hopefully we'll get to hear that at the next meeting or soon thereafter. That's one of the priority topics that we have to deal with in strategic and legacy management. From that point on, we've got to rework the work plan. We've got probably more in there right now than we're going to be able to accomplish before rolling over to the next year. So that'll be one of the discussion items at the next committee meeting. Beyond that, things are doing pretty good. So that's it.
All right. Thanks, Jim. AK, let's move over to waste management.
Yes, first of all, I'd like to just indicate that this is my first opportunity to speak to the committee members as the chairman, and certainly want to welcome everybody aboard and thank you very much. And I want to thank Ms. Candace Cade for accepting to be the vice president, vice chair, pardon me, per my request. And she had a chance to attend our committee meeting and perhaps will have some comments about what transpired there as it related to questions or whatever. But as it has historically, the CAB's Waste Management Committee will play an essential advisory role in the organizing of educational presentation for its members and formulating CAB recommendations regarding DOE's missions of environmental management at Savannah River Site as per the agreements between set forth by DOE and South Carolina DHEC. The salt waste processing facility, which was presented as a part of the presentation by Ms. Patricia Suggs, indicates that it is a state-of-the-art type of facility. SWPF represents a monumental improvement in the processing and storing of high-level radioactive waste. The soon-to-be online operations of SWPF bring to DOE's environmental management improved safety technologies and greater production capabilities. Both the Savannah River Site and DOE complex will benefit immensely by the operations of SWPF, as will the stakeholders of both South Carolina and Georgia. On behalf of the Waste Management Committee, I'd like to thank DOE, the Federal Project Team Director Pam Marks, and the project team, DOE Manager Savannah River Site, Mr. Budney, and his staff, the contractor Parsons and South Carolina DHEC for working with the CAB, DOE Federal Coordinator Delisa Carrico, and CAB Administrator James Tanner and his staff to organize meetings, provide information and updates that proved educational and informational for committee members during the project phase of SWPF. And the Waste Management Committee desires the same level of cooperation as we transition from project phase to operations. Thank you.
All right. Any questions or comments from, not necessarily questions, but comments from the attendees to the waste management meeting? Anybody has anything that they want to add? No? All right, so hearing none, seeing none, let's go over to the Administrative and Outreach Committee with Bobby. Is there anything that you want to talk about with at the full board today?
I thank you, James, Heather, Delisa, for all the A&O that you've been doing, administrative and outreach. Because with COVID, we are kind of limited as to what we can do. Normally, we would have site tours. We haven't scheduled any of those because of COVID. And James, did you want to address that or talk any about the A&O?
I don't know that there's a whole lot that I could really add to what you were saying right now. Obviously, we want to get you on site and let you see the facilities that we're working on and talking about as soon as we can. Don't know when that will be though. So as soon as I find out, you'll find out. And then we do have that membership package for the 2021 members who are ready to join us. That's running through headquarters now. So again, not a lot that I can talk about there. As soon as they find out that they've become members is when we'll find out. So that's where we stand.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Bobby. Are there any other comments from board members that we need to deal with? Any outstanding topics? Dave?
I think in reading one email from somewhere, I don't recall where, did I see that there's an acting DFO now for the cabs?
Yes, that is Kelly Snyder. Most of you have met Dave Borak. He is taken a position with the, oh my gosh, International Atomic Association. I forget what the actual acronym is, but he's in Austria now and he is working with them. Kelly Snyder has taken on the interim duties of DFO. She is a DDFO from the Nevada Site-Specific Advisory Board. She has been working in site-specific details for the past 15, maybe longer years. I'm not exactly sure. But she has a lot of experience and a lot of know-how with how board operations are supposed to work. And she's been doing a great job so far. Been really glad to see her along. Any other questions? Yes.
This is Kay. Yes, I would like to. I'm not sure whether it will come before Waste Management or Nuclear Materials or which committee, but I would like to, now that some decision has been made regarding the change in description of the different waste based on content versus source, as Mr. Budney brought out earlier, I would be interested in learning more about those changes down the road and how we were able to move away some waste from South Carolina and SRS at this time that we were not able to move before. So.
Sure. We'll have a conversation with the waste disposition folks and find out what new information we can get you from that presentation last year on the high-level waste interpretation definition. Hopefully we'll be able to get you a little bit more, but we'll schedule that as soon as we can.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Board members, any other comments, questions that we need to talk to? All right. Next thing that was supposed to be on the agenda was a break. I don't think that we necessarily need to do that. And after that is the reading of public comments. We did not receive any public comments prior to the start of this meeting. So unfortunately, I don't have any to read for you. If anyone watching does want to make a public comment, you can do that via email. The email address that you're going to send those to is in the invitation for this meeting. We'll be keeping that open for the next week. And anything that we receive, we will attach to the meeting minutes during that time. Otherwise, Gil, I think we're at that last agenda item, the adjourning. Would you mind? Do you have any closing words for us?
I do. I think a question that's probably on most of our minds is when can we meet in person? We're going to follow the guidelines that, the DOE provides us. We're going to follow the guidelines that come out of Washington. I know a lot of us want to meet in person because that's where better communication, better questions back and forth come about. James is on it all the time. Believe it or not, I can speak for him a little bit. He wants to meet in person. He wants to do that, but it's just not going to happen right now. So we are going to move ahead as best as we can. I thank you, the committee chairs, for staying on top of things. You're you're impressing me more and more. So I hope that we can meet in person again sometime soon, but I'm not going to tell you what soon is. I don't know what it is either. So as my background screen shows, I just wish we were all on a boat somewhere, just cruising along. So James, I appreciate it. And without any objections, I'm going